You know, when we were growing up, we had it pretty good with all the different cartoons and animated shows back then, especially over on Nickelodeon. I'm talking SpongeBob, Jimmy Neutron, and of course one of my personal favorites, The Fairly Oddparents, featuring our favorite average kid that no one understands. These shows were absolutely goated. You know, until Nickelodeon pretty much ruined all of them in older seasons and spin-off shows, but I digress. This era of cartoons also spawned a great era of licensed games like Battle for Bikini Bottom, The Misadventures of Ed, Edd n Eddy, and of course the Fairly Oddparents video games. In today's video, I'm going to be covering Showdown, the second game in the Fairly Oddparents series, and one of my personal favorite licensed games ever, from both a casual and speedrunning perspective. I hope you all enjoy. So for context, this game is a sequel to the other video game, Breaking the Rules. But this game actually has more to do with the first Fairly Oddparents movie, Abracatastrophe. In this film, Timmy celebrates his fairyversary for going an entire year without exposing that he has fairy godparents. Which does seem like the bare minimum, but I guess 10-year-olds are pretty dumb, and most lose them pretty quickly. As a result, a huge party is thrown for him, where he's given several different magical items from all of the other mystical beings of the fairy world, as well as a magic muffin with the ability to grant rule-free wishes. Of course, shenanigans ensue. Timmy loses a muffin in a food fight, a monkey turns the world into the planet of the apes, and eventually the muffin falls into the hand of Crocker. Honestly, these movies are great, and I would recommend giving them a watch again if you haven't seen them in a while. But back to the video game, the game opens up with Timmy preparing to watch a brand new season of Crash Nebula, when just before it begins, his TV stops working. No issue for Timmy though, since he can just wish for the TV to be fixed. But for some mysterious reason, both Cosmo and Wanda's wands aren't working. Wanda instead grabs her emergency wand, and learns that it isn't actually a backup wand, but is actually an instructional video of what to do when magic wands aren't working. The film is presented by King Oberon and Queen Titania, who are apparently the old rulers of Fairy World. Although the characters only appear in this video game, so I don't believe them to be canon. The gang is then transported within the film, which will serve as a tutorial level. Just like most speed games, the tutorial cannot be skipped, but this will be a good time to go over some general mechanics. This game is a 3D platformer, so Timmy not only has the ability to double jump, but can also sprint for short distances, assuming he still has some of his sprint meter remaining. Timmy is also able to jump out of his sprints to clear large gaps and maintain the speed boost from his sprint without costing any stamina. Later in the tutorial section, we learn that in order for Timmy to make wishes, he's going to have to do it the old-fashioned way by collecting 3 wish stars. These stars sort of have a mind of their own and will either be asleep, allowing us to collect them easily, but some of them will just run away from Timmy. But luckily there's usually a way to manipulate them in our favor. For example, if we chase this first star around until it runs out of stamina and begins moving slowly, we can quit out of the game, and then upon starting another run, for some reason the star will just be chilling, allowing us to grab it quickly. This is really nice because it keeps us close to this movable block. Generally, we'll just try moving blocks as close as we absolutely need them to be able to space out double jumps to reach ledges. Upon grabbing all 3 stars, we'll be granted a wish in the form of a new ability. For example, in the tutorial level, we gain the ability to shoot a slingshot to shoot targets with, and once all the targets are cleared, we can finish the level. For some reason, not all cutscenes in this game are skippable, including the one at the end of the section, but by standing near the door at the end puts Timmy in the end level trigger, essentially overriding the unskippable cutscene with the skippable one. It's pretty funny looking back at the first speedrun of this game by Kurovi, because the tutorial level gameplay looks almost identical to modern day speedruns, despite the run being performed 10 years ago. The only improvements would be a quicker order for taking out the targets, as well as having the first star immobilized, which funnily enough was known about back then. But Kurovi misunderstood how it worked, initially thinking it required skipping the Titania cutscene on a certain frame. For this reason, for the rest of the video, the tutorial level won't be included when discussing the run's progression. Following the tutorial level, the gang heads to Fairy World to figure out what's going on with their wands. As it turns out, the Royal Jewel, the second most powerful magic known to fairies, has gone missing, and every fairy has lost their magic. Although Jorgen von Strengel suspects Quince, the former jester for the old king and queen, to be the culprit in an act of revenge for recently being fired for being unfunny. So the next task at hand is to find the jester and reclaim the stolen jewel. Looking back at the first speedrun of this game by Kurovi, he first starts out by quickly grabbing 3 wish stars exactly in the same fashion as modern day runs, which is really impressive. In this segment we see really solid lines, clean cuts around corners, and even specific paths to manipulate the stars' movements to grab them quickly. I decided to line up Kurovi's run alongside the current world record, and you can see just how well they're able to keep up, even while picking up coins along the way. Honestly, super impressive. Coins are used for certain power-ups later on, which was more necessary in these earlier runs, but we'll get into that later. Normally after collecting these stars, we would then need to collect 2 more sets of stars, with one of the worst sections of the entire game where we need to herd these cows back into their pen, repair the color factory, and eventually restore the rainbow bridge leading to Quince. But Kurovi has something better in mind. He jumps across this gap, skipping a small platforming section, and then after entering the center of Fairy World, he does some platforming on these rooftops, jump over the barrier leading to the bridge. From here he jumps onto the bridge, and luckily even though it isn't loaded in, he's still able to run across it, skipping pretty much the whole area heading straight into the Quince fight. This fight is unique in that normally boss fight cutscenes begin upon entering the boss area, but this one has a trigger that's walked into instead, leading to a 33-second unskippable cutscene. But Kurovi figured out that if you pause the game on the first frame upon loading the cutscene, the game actually allows you to skip it. This does glitch out the fight a bit, and Quince's health bar won't be loaded in, so Kurovi has to run backwards after skipping the cutscene to load the health bar, and then quickly run over and ground pound this button to initiate the fight. Because the cutscene never plays, Quince is never properly loaded in. But his hitbox is still intact, so damage could still be dealt. The gnomes here can get in the way a bit, but by standing on the card dispenser, they can be avoided. After 4 rounds of damage are done, Quince is defeated, and the game is presumably over. Jorgen apprehends Quince, but finds no trace of the royal jewel. So it must have been stolen by somebody else. Jorgen decides he'll continue his investigation, but as a backup plan, sends a crew on an adventure to create the most powerful magical item in existence, the Fairyversary Muffin. Jorgen gives Timmy the recipe, which requires pixie sugar, mooncalf milk, a phoenix egg, and super strong hair-raising flour. Timmy goes online and orders all the ingredients, which only have 1 of each in stock. But upon the ingredients being delivered, they're intercepted by Vicky, Timmy's babysitter. She passes off the sugar and flour to Timmy's parents, steals the milk for herself, and destroys the egg. The crew heads back to Jorgen, who tells them to interact with each of the fairy control screens to retrieve the ingredients, create the muffin, and hopefully restore everything back to normal. But I don't know about you guys, but if I had a magical muffin that could allow me to wish for anything, it's pretty obvious what I'd wish for, and that's an entire delivery truck of Factor, which just so happens to be today's video sponsor. Factor 75 is basically the best meal delivery service out there. How it works is you go to their website factor75.com and choose whichever meals interest you the most from their selection. They have a ton of low-calorie menu items, as well as keto and vegan-friendly options. Once you pick out what you want and complete your order, in a few days they'll ship out one of these massive boxes that have some frozen gel packs inside, keeping everything fresh until you get home. If you're a busybody like me and don't always have time to cook 3 times a day, I would highly recommend trying this out, rather than having to resort to fast food. Because not only will Factor most likely be cheaper than that, but also faster, because meals only take around 2 minutes in the microwave to prepare. If you're interested in trying out Factor, make sure to use my code EZScapeFeb50 at checkout for 50% off your first box, as well as free wellness shots for life if you continue to stay with them. Link will be in the description. Thanks again to Factor for sponsoring my video. Now let's get back to the speedrun. So at this point, pretty much everything that's done in this original speedrun by Kurovi is still done and runs today. So it's really impressive that they managed to find the most optimal route so early on. At this point in the run, there are 2 levels to choose from. Either Dad's Dream to retrieve the flower, or take it on the chin to get the phoenix egg. And in this case, Kurovi decided to go with the latter. This is a Crimson Chin themed level, where the entire city of Cincinnati is submerged in water from H2Olga. Kurovi starts out this level by running across these cars and jumping onto this platform to cut off and grab the first star immediately. They also grab the second star quickly, but for some reason this jump across the gap can be pretty weird and hard to ledge grab, forcing them to have to do it again. After climbing the ladder and grabbing the third star, Timmy unlocks a Crimson Wing power-up, allowing him to glide for a short period of time. From here, Kurovi heads back down to the buildings and crosses to the other side of the level to begin collecting the next set of stars. Yet again, Kurovi shows off some impressive movement, as well as conserving good momentum off this box to jump onto these platforms, demonstrating a good understanding of game physics. After the third star is grabbed, Timmy is granted a pogo stick, allowing him to jump to higher up areas. Kurovi is not only adept at switching between abilities quickly, but right here they show off a pretty cool movement option by running off a ledge and jumping while in the air, which can only be done if sprint has remained held when running off platforms. Once the pogo stick is unlocked, we're then meant to block the flow of water with these cubes to reveal a button, granting access to the waterworks. But in Kurovi's run, they discovered if you jump in the water behind the waterworks entrance, Timmy will still hit the checkpoint trigger, and upon reloading, will immediately enter the waterworks. In Kurovi's notes, they explain that the rest of the level is mostly just a combination of gameplay optimizations and small sequence breaks, most of which are pretty straightforward. The gameplay in this level is just going from button to button to fill in empty water in different areas in order to progress. In order to defeat H2Olga, the player must climb up the scaffolding while avoiding enemies and any water hazards before she absorbs enough water to extinguish the phoenix egg and harness its powers. Each button hit along the way will dispense sewage into her pool of water, weakening her. After the third button is pressed, H2Olga is defeated and the egg is collected. Next, Kurovi will enter Dad's Dream, where we'll need to defeat a giant robot in order to wake him up. After grabbing the first star, Kurovi will head into the shop and spend 150 coins for the super sneakers to double Timmy's stamina. The first wish that's granted is a light bulb to attract moths, and since moths eat suits, it allows Timmy to bypass the animated suits, blocking certain doorways. For For the first section, Crovy performs what might be the most difficult skip in the run at this point by jumping up this wall to land on this metal piping. From here he'll jump up this wall and jump across the seam at the top just before collision ends. Jumping across the seam is definitely not easy, as we see him mess it up once, but luckily after a nice save, gets it on the second attempt. This allowed Crovy to skip the entire first section. He then death abuses to return to the start of the area and grabs a moth before heading out. After grabbing all 3 wish stars in the next area, Timmy unlocks a magnet with the ability to open metal doors and collect and shoot bolts from these walking buckets. Crovy figured out that the lamppost in the next area could simply be used to hop straight to the next machine, skipping this entire area as well. After collecting the next 3 stars, Timmy is given a klaxon to wake up these sleeping benches that catapult Timmy upwards. In the next area, Crovy completely avoids collecting any moths, opting for riskier strats by just running past the suit quickly before it can catch Timmy. He'll also abuse runoff jumps to jump across large gaps, skipping even more suits along the way. After doing some intended platforming, there will be one more jump which isn't necessarily the trickiest, but along the way he runs past pretty much every checkpoint trigger, and missing this jump or any jump prior could result in tragedy. Thankfully every jump was hit, and Crovy made it to the final machine to repair this boat to sail to the giant robot. Just before sailing, the boat will need some fuel, which is done from, and I'm just quoting Cosmo here, by getting into Timmy's dad's central thinking cortex thingy. Basically, we just need to fly through a Crash Bandicoot-esque auto-scroller and collect light bulbs. This can't be skipped, and nothing can be done to speed the minigame up. After completing it, we're finally onto the robot. Since Crovy never shot a single bolt with a magnet, he still has all 5 that you normally have after unlocking it. When the button pops up, it needs to be slammed quickly, and then 3 shots are required for the first phase, 4 for the second, and 5 for the last. A good time to collect extra bolts is while waiting for the robot to catch up. After the final phase, the robot is destroyed, and Timmy's dad wakes up and gives us a code word to retrieve the sugar from his toy robot, and that's another ingredient knocked off the list. Following this level, we learn that there's no new leads on who stole the royal jewel, other than that they must have gotten access to the safe in Oberon and Titania's mansion where it was stored. To aid in the investigation, the gang heads to the level get a clue to search through the mansion for evidence. Upon entering the level, we're greeted by the Chamberlain, the chief steward who has been serving the king and queen for centuries. He's unaware of any clues, but he directs us to the door that never opens to see what it knows. But as it turns out, this door never opens, so whoever stole the jewel must have stolen it from a different opening. Back to the speedrun, Crovy starts out the level by going up the staircase and heads into the area containing the first 3 stars. Per usual, Crovy's movement and route is nearly identical to modern day runs, performing some deceptively hard jumps while maintaining clean movement. The first wish granted in this level is one of the coolest abilities in the entire game, which is an upside downer, allowing Timmy to flip the entire level at will whenever he likes. This allows Crovy to proceed through the level through a secret entrance on the ceiling. Normally in this level you're meant to unlock 2 more abilities, which are the ghost costume to phase through grates and other phaseable objects, as well as a magic fine glass to detect invisible objects. Although the magic fine glass isn't really needed, as Crovy is able to cheese past the rest of the level with just using the level flipper, as well as some clever platforming. There was a cutscene just before Crovy crossed the pit, and as a shock to absolutely no one, Timmy learns that the king and queen were indeed responsible for the theft of the missing jewel. However, they aren't working alone, and are accompanied by a strange Kingdom Hearts looking shadow figure, who seems to be in charge of the whole operation. Crovy is then meant to complete a box sliding puzzle, but for some reason this ledge is grabbable, meaning rather than needing a box to jump through it, the level flipper is all that's needed. Then it's on to the end of level boss fight in the treasure room. During this fight, we're meant to use a magic fine glass to locate the boss for when it turns invisible. But unsurprisingly, the ghost remains in the exact position it was in when it was still visible, so that's not really needed. After dropping 4 boxes on its head marks the end of the level. After unmasking the ghost, we learn that it was none other than Oberon and Titania the whole time. During the conversation, Oberon leaks that they gave the jewel to somebody else, and plan to use it to rule the human realm now that they no longer have any control over Fairy World. But then they realize they could have just poofed out of there the entire time and escaped.
Now why didn't I think of that?
Next up is a Vicky level to reclaim the Mooncalf Milk. Honestly, this is one of my favorite levels casually, mainly due to the pinball ability unlocked later in the level, which is just genuinely fun to play around with. Unfortunately for Crovy, however, at the time there weren't really any skips or tricks for this level other than the occasional sprint jump maneuver. Compounded with the fact that this is the longest level in the entire game, taking him about 12 minutes to complete, Crovy wrote in their notes that this level is pretty boring for them, especially the boss fight where you literally just run into a bunch of different buttons in a circle, and that's it. There's also not too much that happens here to advance the story, so we're mostly going to skip past this level. But still, overall I do enjoy how consistently fun a lot of these levels are from a casual perspective. And now Corovy's onto the final level, the Great Escape, which is an ape level probably themed from the events that happened in Abercatastrophe. Crovy first has to break out of the jail section, which he does by cheesing some of the puzzle by walking across the railing. The guards in this area have really bad detection, so it's easy to sneak past them. But still, this section of the level is overall pretty slow, as you need to free monkeys from their cages and lead them to each button to raise the gate. Once in the central chamber, he somehow does a wall jump off this pillar to reach a second level, which is weird because that's not even a mechanic in this game. If it wasn't obvious, the first unlock in this level is a banana gun used to bait the monkeys. But the second unlock is this lizard suit, giving Timmy the ability to walk on walls with vines. In the central chamber, there are two paths that need to be cleared. One path more focused on the lizard suit, and the other more focused on the last upgrade, the monkey wrench. However, we won't need to talk about that upgrade because after opening the banana on the one side of the level, Grovey performs a pretty crazy jump to reach the other side instantly, which is a pretty cool little sequence break. In the boss fight versus the Ape King, Grovey managed to figure out an interesting exploit where after shooting the boss with the banana gun and ground pounding him, it's possible to land back on the top platform by ground pounding to cancel the recoil, allowing for a much faster fight. Following this fight, all the ingredients are now collected, and it's finally time to bake the muffin. Jorgen poofs in an oven, and... you know what? I thought none of the fairies could use magic, but at this point, I've sort of stopped questioning this game. I mean, keep in mind, Timmy literally ordered the ingredients for the most powerful object in the universe on the internet with 1 second delivery. Anyways, unfortunately, the muffin can't be eaten after being baked because it's too hot. But time is running short as all the TV stations are beginning to broadcast the same show, which plans on taking over the world. Jorgen has tracked down the signal to channel 13, so while the crew waits for the muffin to cool down, they head to the TV station to investigate. Upon entering, we learn that whoever the king and queen were working with backstabbed them and took the royal jewel for themselves, and they've been using it to make TVs on Earth magical, turning TV shows into real life, which explains why Timmy, his parents, and Vicky got transported within them. Timmy suspects the only other character in the video game to be the culprit, which is the Chamberlain, and he's still wrong. It's actually the Chamberlain's shadow. The Chamberlain explains that centuries ago he separated from his shadow, hoping the two of them could better serve the king and queen together. But as it turns out, all shadows are evil, and in secret he had been plotting to take over the world for some time. His plan is to broadcast his TV show Shadow TV across the world, where shadows will wear their casters rather than the other way around, which honestly goes pretty hard. The boss fight starts out with a slam that thrusts Timmy in the air, but this can be cancelled with a quick ground pound. There are 3 buttons located around the room, and they need to be ground pounded in order to stun the boss. The button to choose is always the one the shadow is looking at, and the shadow will always look at the furthest away button from Timmy. After ground pounding the button, the boss becomes vulnerable, and then it just takes another ground pound on either of his feet to deal damage, and that's pretty much it, rinse and repeat. The game ends with Timmy and the shadow chasing down the Fairyversary muffin, just before Oberon swoops in and throws it towards Titania, who passes it to Timmy. After a sick maneuver, Timmy catches a muffin in his mouth, and wishes for everything to return to normal. Timmy heads back home only to just miss the Crash Nebula special, and it's never going to be aired again. But of course, he is fairy godparents, so after a simple wish, he gets to enjoy the season finale, and that's the game. Grovey ended his speedrun in 49 minutes 43 seconds. And considering all the crazy skips and speed tech he found, this time was pretty impressive. Apparently he had spent the entire year working on this route, so it makes sense why his first speedrun was so good. He writes, while this game isn't completely broken, you can't skip any levels, there's still plenty of tricks and glitches in the game that allow it to be beaten pretty quickly. But only a little over a month later, on September 28, 2013, Grovey would post a new speedrun, absolutely destroying his previous time. This run would clock in at 28 minutes, 46 seconds, over 20 minutes faster than the previous run. So what happened? Well, other than a small route change in Dad's stream to save 12 seconds, Grovey managed to find what at the time would be the holy grail of Fairly Oddparents speedrunning. In this run, we would see after completing Get a Clue that instead of going into Vicky Strikes Back, Grovey would instead head over to these computers and simply just perform a double jump over the barrier to get past. It's really that easy. Similar to the Rainbow Bridge in Fairy World, although the bridge isn't loaded in, it's still able to be walked on, and furthermore, the Shadow Showdown level can still be entered, despite not entering the prerequisite levels. This was huge for the speedrun, as now 2 of the more boring levels were completely excluded out of the route, while the more interesting levels remained. In his notes, Grovey explains that they do plan on improving the run in the future, due to this run having several mistakes. But with current strats, he believed a 27-minute time would be possible. Despite this run occurring only a month after the previous, it wouldn't be until 4 years later for Grovey to return to the game. However, he was finally back and achieved his goal with a time of 27 minutes, 32 seconds. Based on his notes, the route was nearly identical to the last, just with less mistakes overall. However, there were a couple new strategies added to the H2Olga fight and take it on the chin. The first is a small cutscene skip just before the fight. By using the Crimson Wing to fly straight into the doorway and holding up allows Timmy to fly around the cutscene trigger. The cutscene audio does still play, but he's able to move around during it, essentially skipping it, saving about 7 seconds. He also found an alternate pogo stick route to hop around some of the piping, getting to the third part of the boss fight quicker, saving an additional 10 seconds. Despite the new optimizations, Crovy explains that due to small mistakes and sloppy movement and fairly disastrous and get a clue, they weren't able to get a 26-minute time this run, but believed it definitely was possible with current strats, and he was definitely right about that, as only 20 days later, he'd achieve a 27-minute and 1 second time. The main difference in this run was just skipping coins, as the longer sprint meter only really benefited the longer Ape and Vicky levels, and it was pretty easy at this point for Crovy to just conserve meter by sprint jumping, so the trip to the shop was cut out. But it was back to the drawing board, and we wouldn't see a run for a while. Instead, a handful of glitch videos. Some of these glitches wouldn't be very useful, such as this clip in the tutorial level, but others would prove to be a bit more useful, like a skip to bypass the ice ray and take it on the chin. About a month and a half later, Crovy would return, achieving their goal with a time of 26 minutes, 26 seconds. The mistakes in this run were about equal to the last, but the main difference would be the newly added ice ray skip, as well as a block puzzle skip in the waterworks by performing a tricky glide. These tricks alone saved anywhere from 50 seconds to a minute combined. Crovy mentions in his notes that he's happy with the time he got and doesn't plan on returning to the category unless something new is found or somebody beats his time. Let's see which happens first. Crovy would continue posting new glitches, but instead for categories like all levels, which would still benefit from skips and levels like the Great Escape. But even these videos showed off some powerful glitches with some new implications for the rest of the game, like this weird hover glitch Crovy found by taking damage at the same time as jumping off the vines. He would then refine the glitch and use it to skip most of the Great Escape by getting to the bananas way earlier than usual, and is still used in runs today. Crovy would then post a new route change in the H2Olga boss fight once again. It was discovered by another runner named Zam that it was much easier to start from the top button and then work your way back down to not have to deal with nearly as many hazards on the track and could just fall down to each button instantly. Crovy would add in a bunch of these new tricks for their all levels run and save nearly 5 minutes off the first any % run, which is basically just an all levels run anyways. A few months later on July 25th, 2018, Crovy would come back with another any % world record of 25 minutes, 28 seconds, shaving another minute off the run. He did say he'd be back if new tricks were found, and oh boy did they find a cool trick, discovered by Zam once again. By pressing glide the same frame as opening the wish menu and take it on the chin, would make the game buffer a glide so it occurs after the menu is closed. But if you unequip the Crimson Wing while in the menu, Timmy no longer has his gauge present while gliding and can fly infinitely. This trivialized a lot of the prior skips like the skip into the waterworks, the block puzzle, and the ice race skip. Combined with a new button route in the boss lair, Crovy was able to shave off that minute in this level alone. Following this run would be another regular disappearance from Crovy. At this point, Crovy wasn't leaving any more write-ups or comments about his runs anymore, just drops a world record and leaves like a true Chad. But something was brewing in the community, as during the time between when this run was posted in 2018 and his next run in 2021, the community had grown quite a bit, and even just having a few new eyes looking at the game meant reroutes were inevitable. After this 3-year hiatus, Crovy would return with a time of 23 minutes, 5 seconds. Finally, with crystal clear emulator quality gameplay and splits. During this time, timing conventions for the leaderboards would switch from real-time to load-remove time across PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Dolphin Emulator to ensure everyone who was playing this game was on an even playing field, which I think is pretty cool. This did play a role in the amount of time shaved off the total, and in general, the load remover would take off a little over a minute from each person's run. So this 23-minute 5-second time was actually a 24-minute 8-second time, but still a 1-minute 20-second improvement nonetheless. For the rest of the video, I will only be referring to runs with their load remove time in mind. So what exactly did Crovy do to save this much time? Well, for starters, a new glider glitch was found in Take It on the Chin called Glider Climb. During the startup animation of the Crimson Wing, Timmy is lifted up into the air slightly. If the abilities use the same frame a cutscene begins, the height increase won't stop being applied until after the cutscene ends, allowing Timmy to gain massive amounts of height. Crovy would use a glitch at the start of the waterworks. By using the infinite climb to fly above the cutscene trigger in this first room, he could then set up to walk into the trigger, just as he activates a glider to go straight to the room where the ice race skip is performed, saving about 25 seconds. Crovy would also use this trick during the H2Olga fight after performing the first cutscene skip. After positioning Timmy in the corner, the next cutscenes will play, and there's a short 2-frame window in between when H2Olga says, "Extinguish the Crimson Chin's power forever," and Wanda's saying she's huge. By mashing the Crimson Wing, and hopefully getting the input on the earliest frame in between the cutscenes, it's possible to get a massive amount of height above the level, as the amount of height you get correlates with how long the cutscene is. This was much faster than pogoing to the top, and the route on the way back down was the same as before. This trick saved about 30 seconds. With these 2 tricks added in, you can see the time melt right off the timer. Also in Dad's dream, instead of collecting the first 3 wish stars, he instead runs past the first animated suit, which is really difficult to do, and heads straight for the seam walk. This is because getting to this machine is a trigger to spawn the next set of stars, so once he gets back to the starting location, he can grab both the yellow and purple sets of stars at the same time. This is only a minor time save, and the rest of the level plays out exactly the same as before. But in the next level, Get a Clue, Crovy would perform the first ever out-of-bounds trick discovered by fellow community member earllgray, and was made RTA viable by some mystery. The beginning of the level would play out exactly the same as before, up until receiving the level flipper. The cutscene for the door that never opens only plays when you're within its detection, and when you activate the cutscene, it repositions Timmy. However, if this is activated while using the level flipper, the game repositions Timmy out of bounds instead. From here, there's a whole out of bounds route that Crovy follows leading to the boss fight. Surprisingly, this only saves 8 seconds over the previous inbounds route. But hey, 8 seconds is 8 seconds. With all these new tricks added in, Crovy managed to beat their previous time by a minute flat. In Crovy's notes, he writes pretty decent run. No major mistakes, but there were a few silly mistakes here and there. Crovy would still remain active in the community after this run, but this would be the last any % run we would see from him. Going all the way from a 49.43 to a 23.05 is just extremely impressive, no matter the context in any game. But even though Crovy was done setting new world records, it doesn't mean nobody else would step up to the plate. If you've been a watcher of this channel for some time, you might know where this video is about to go. The man that needs no introduction. The licensed video game master himself. The man, the myth, the legend, Toxicpinhead. Toxic is well known for his high level gameplay and consistency in so many speedruns, it's almost hard to keep count, and is the main reason I only have aspirations to be a content creator and not a world record holding speedrunner instead. So you know, thanks for that. Before ever doing any runs, Toxic generally spends a lot of time practicing and researching his games. He would post his first Showdown clip in August of 2022. At the time, earllgray was working on the task for Take It on the Chin to be able to beat the level without ever unlocking the pogo stick. This would be achieved by using a series of different glider climbs. This was theorized to not be viable for speedruns, as glider climbs at the time were just something you could throw into your run to save a bit of time, but if you weren't able to pull off the trick, you could still finish the run with a bit of time loss. But requiring 4 frame perfect inputs with no room for error was just a bit too much for runners, which is why only a task exists of this route. However, in this first video from Toxic, he performs a glider climb using this cutscene just after grabbing the last star for the Crimson Wing. This allows him to get high up on top of this building. At the time, I'm sure other runners knew this was doable, but there wasn't really any benefit to doing so. Or was there? Once on top, we would then see Toxic perform an infinite glide all the way over to this building in the distance. The height gained from starting on that building was enough height to be able to walk on this random seam that for some reason was tangible. It was important to do this, as jumping off the seam would give Timmy the ability to ground pound again, and by performing one at the top of the ceiling for max speed, and then pausing just before Timmy hits the water, would allow Toxic to open the options menu, causing the game to drop to 20 FPS from 30. Skipping right past the death plane, allowing him to fall far below the rest of the level. If performed correctly, at the right distance, Timmy would hit the death and checkpoint trigger at the same time, and respawn in the room just outside of H2Olga's lair, saving nearly 2 minutes off the Pogoless task. Toxic would then find another crazy route in Dad's dream. This route would make use of a float glitch similar to the one I shared earlier in the Great Escape. But of course this level doesn't have access to the lizard suit, so Toxic would instead set up this glitch by grabbing onto a ledge and performing the pull-up animation into a cutscene trigger. This puts the game in a similar state as the Great Escape float, but the key takeaway is that Timmy's arms aren't flying in the air as if he's in a falling animation. This is an important distinction, as if Timmy isn't in this state, he can't ground pound because the game thinks he's walking on a surface. This means if Toxic were to lose control of Timmy, he wouldn't be able to save him. It's almost uncanny how similar this glitch is to the swim and air glitch in the console version of Spyro 2 and the Spyro Reignited trilogy. How it works in that game is after setting up the glitch, Spyro could gain or lose height by rolling into surfaces with inclines or declines. In that game we were forced to roll since movement was otherwise locked, but in Shadow Showdown we could just move forward like usual. In Toxic's route, he would make sure to grab a moth on the way back to the starting area to clear out one of the animated suits, since they can be pretty annoying to bypass, and then head to the third area of the level, as with this glitch he could bypass the klaxon. After interacting with the third machine and repairing the boat, there's only one problem, and that is getting rid of the glitch, which can only be done by quitting out of the game. But if he were to do that, he would lose all level progress. This is why he floats into an enemy in order to force Timmy into a falling animation. Like I said earlier, when in this animation, he regains the ability to ground pound, and Toxic will then head back to the starting area and ground pound the save button to save the game to be able to quit out without losing progress. He does one of the craziest out of bounds ground pounds to pull this off, but in his actual speedruns has a much better setup that works more consistently. Then from here, he just collects the purple stars in the starting area to be able to deal damage to the boss, and the rest is business as usual. Despite how insane this all looks and how much is skipped, he only theorizes to save around 30 seconds. But still, that is a ton of time to save. Toxic would then begin doing runs trying out the skips and Take It on the Chin, and his first posted run would end with a time of 25:12. In this run, he unfortunately missed a glider climb and had to resort to performing it back up by unlocking a pogo stick to get on top of the building. Furthermore, he'd also missed a glider climb in H2Olga's boss room, but I guess luckily in this case, he did have the pogo stick, so he could just use Kurovi's old pogo route to get to the third button instead. His next run performed 5 days later would now finally include both glider climbs, saving a significant amount of time over the previous run, resulting in a gold split of 1 minute, 19 seconds, just to give an idea of how much time this glider climb saved. This run would also include the new Dad's Dream route, now with a much better setup using this bucket to fly into the ceiling, ensuring Timmy doesn't gain too much height. With this in mind, a simple visual cue was all that was needed to consistently hit the save button. Unfortunately, on the final phase of the robot boss fight, Toxic hit a frame-perfect cutscene skip on the boss, causing the shockwave to not despawn, resulting in Timmy taking damage, and the boss got back up. Toxic wasn't sure what to do in this case, so he tried jumping into a pit hoping that would fix things, but it didn't. He ended up having to run around the entire arena again, costing most if not all the time save he had gained throughout the run. This run would end with a time of 23 minutes 40 seconds. But with loads removed, it was actually a 22:15, meaning Toxic had just broken the world record. Although a bittersweet record at the very least. But with all these new strategies, if he could just put it all together with no robot shenanigans, a 21-minute time was surely in the bag. And only 5 days later, on August 21st, 2022, Toxic would post another personal best with a description only saying, "Good run." So you already knew it was going to be insane. Toxic lost about 10 seconds and take it on the chin due to a missed ledge grab, reminiscent to Kurovi's first ever speedrun. But he would make up for it and then some with a perfect Dad's Dream, golding the segment by over a minute. He would end the run saving a minute and 22 seconds off his previous run, dropping the world record all the way down to 20 minutes and 47 seconds with loads removed. Truly an insane run, as just to get through Take It on the Chin required 3 frame perfect inputs in a row to pull off, not to mention all the other stuff in this run is definitely not easy to pull off. Still to this day, he's the only person to beat Kurovi's time. However, I don't think the any % speedrun is done just yet, as there definitely are improvements to be made on it, including the 10 seconds saved and Take It on the Chin. But outside of that, there were 2 reroutes made after this run. The first one comes from Kurovi, who is showing off a Dad's Dream individual level speedrun. In this run, he completely skips the need for grabbing the light bulb power up, and instead opts for some really tight passes around the animated suits. With this in mind, after setting up the float, instead of needing to stop by the starting area to drop off a moth at a suit, he just goes directly to the third machine instead. I can't overstate how difficult these sprints past these suits are. All you need to know is if even Toxic doesn't want to do them, they're probably pretty tough to pull off. But if someone were to try this route and instead do Dad's Dream before Take It on the Chin to grind it out, they would save at least 30 seconds. Finally, Toxic figured out during the out of bounds portion of Get a Clue, if you jump off the side of the level and pause the game whenever this present is in view, the game will eventually load in this red building to land on, saving about 13 seconds from the previous route. So in total, there are about 50 to 60 seconds in route optimizations that could still be performed, but time will tell to see if anyone's willing to step up to the plate to complete it. Well, you know, that is if we're talking about the slow GameCube version of the speedrun. What? Did you think GameCube was faster for this game just because every run I covered was either done on GameCube or GameCube emulator? Well, you, my friend, would be wrong, as several months later in February of 2023, Toxic was back, and this time he found the real holy grail of Fairly OddParents speedrunning. You see, the PS2 is fast for this game for all the wrong reasons. In this game, lag is actually super beneficial if you couldn't tell from the skip and Take It on the Chin, but also because when lag spikes occur while sprinting, it makes Timmy zoom ahead really fast, which can often be seen when running across the Rainbow Bridge in Fairy World. Well, Toxic discovered if you walk in front of the TVs in the hub location, the game will begin loading the cutscene connected to the level before even pressing A, causing a lot of lag on the PS2, but not so much on the GameCube. The Take It on the Chin cutscene occurs within the level hub itself, so it doesn't create much lag. But the Dad's Dream level requires actually loading in the house and a bunch of other assets from the start of the level before playing, which creates a ton of lag. So Toxic will walk up to the Dad's Dream level and then position himself by a slanted ledge in front of the first gate, and I shit you not, will listen for clunking sounds from his PS2 before beginning a sprint. With the added speed boost and trajectory, he's able to jump over the first gate. From here, the next gate will be closed, but in this clip he simply just enters and completes Get a Clue to unlock it, and then does the rest of the hub skip as usual. But literally on the same day, he would then post another video skipping Get a Clue by jumping on the first gate and running around the barrier past the second gate. The following day, he'd put it all together and complete the first ever sub 10-minute run. In this run, it takes him about 5 attempts of going back and forth between Dad's Dream and Take It on the Chin to finally get the lag boost to go above the gate. He also wastes a lot of time going in and out of Get a Clue, because apparently he was dealing with a lot of game crashes when attempting to enter Shadow Showdown right away. But in his next run, not only does he get the lag boost first try, he also skips entering and exiting Get a Clue and heads straight into Shadow Showdown, as apparently the game crash was just random, and may have just been due to his disc or something. Toxic would end this run with a time of 6 minutes and 47 seconds, over 15 minutes faster than his previous run. Although for the sake of leaderboard integrity, this speedrun is moved to an unrestricted category, almost exactly like the zip category in Elden Ring. It's one of those things that's neat it exists, opposed to not existing at all, but a pretty lame category overall, and most would probably have more fun with the restricted any percent category instead. If you guys made it this far into the video and you thoroughly enjoyed it or thought it was interesting, be sure to leave a like, as that's the best way to show support. Special thanks to Toxicpinhead and earllgray for helping me out with all the information in this video. It literally would not have been possible to make without their help. Also, huge thanks to Krinios, who's a new editor on this channel. You guys will hopefully see a lot more of their work here across the rest of the year. Reminder that you can get 50% off Factor right now with my promo code EZScape50 at checkout on factor75.com or by using the link in the description. And that's all I have to say for today's video. Subscribe for more speedrunning related content, and as always, I hope you all have a beautiful life.